Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Replenish the Atmosphere of Discovery, where we discover the master's plan for our lives. So today's session is on abandonment. This is session 93 titled Abandonment. So abandonment is a kind of a loss, a disconnection, or neglect, right? It is an exit. Whether that exit is physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. Abandonment is about exits, right? Some of us have recognized when we have been abandoned, and other people, they've not even recognized that they're dealing with abandonment, right? But they're still dealing with the consequences of what you want or can't recognize, okay? So even if you don't recognize that you have been abandoned, you may still be dealing with the effects of it. So mental abandonment is the denial of mental support, denying of your ideas, your thoughts, your opinions, or even intentionally refusing to give knowledge and understanding when it is in your power to do so. That is a form of mental abandonment. Not providing structure, guidance, or any other intellectual support when it is needed. That is mental abandonment. Okay. Emotional abandonment. That is the removal of emotional support, right? So whether that be affection or validation, whether it's someone being distant or making themselves emotionally unavailable, that is emotional abandonment. Somebody neglecting your emotional needs, that is emotional abandonment. Physical abandonment is physically leaving, right? Withdrawing your physical support, whether that be withdrawing your presence, your protection, or even your monetary support, right? It is the physical absence of care and basic needs. That is physical abandonment, right? And the last one I want to talk about is spiritual abandonment, right? Where you feel withdrawn from your purpose, you feel withdrawn from God, right? Feeling disconnected or neglected spiritually, feeling ashamed or excluded because of your faith, because of your spiritual beliefs, right? That is spiritual abandonment. And this can happen in any kind of relationship, right? Whether it's friendship, spouses, parent to child, child to parent, right? Employer and employee relationships, so on and so forth, okay? You can also do these things to yourself, okay? Mental abandonment causes you to feel confused a lot. It causes you to feel overwhelmed, anxious, overlooked, right? It also causes all types of identity confusion, which can cause you to isolate, right? So that is the consequence of mental abandonment. A consequence of emotional abandonment is where you feel unworthy, you feel rejected, right? You feel disconnected. That is because of emotional abandonment, right? Physical abandonment makes you feel unsafe and vulnerable, and that can often show through your fear of being emotionally available and vulnerable to other people, right? Spiritual abandonment makes your soul feel empty, right? It makes you feel purposeless. It makes you feel broken within. And so abandonment is not just someone or something walking away or being taken away, right? It's the insecurity that settles and after someone or something that you've counted on has proved to be unsafe or unreliable to you, right? So that means that your trust is violated because that assurance of safety is gone. That is abandonment, okay? So abandonment is also a seed of stubbornness, right? The reason why those you're never enough thoughts keep going on, playing on and on in your mind, right? And the root of why some of us become people pleasers or try to control things that we cannot control. All right. So if you are around stubborn people, that may be the effect of the abandonment issues, right? So if you feel like you will never be enough for people, that's tied to your abandonment issues, right? And abandonment shows up in multiple forms. Like I said, it's emotional, it's mental, it's physical, and it is spiritual, right? You can have all those forms of abandonment within you. And like I said, abandonment does create an insecurity, okay? When someone that you relied on emotionally, physically, or spiritually leaves, it breaks that internal sense of safety, right? An abandonment is not just about that physical absence. Sometimes You think people don't have abandonment issues because nobody left, right? But it's about that consistency being broken, right? It damages your ability to trust people or situations because your nervous system automatically begins to associate closeness with danger and disappointment, right? So you keep people far. You don't allow anybody to get close to you. When someone abandons you physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, that sense of safety has been shattered, right? And so abandonment is not just about someone leaving, it's that lingering insecurity that follows, and that's what you start having the symptoms of, right? It tells you that you're not worth staying for, right? It says that you're too much, you're doing too much, right? It tells you you'll get left again, right? And this creates that breach in your ability to trust other people and even begin to trust yourself, right? That sense of security is foundational to emotional health. And when that is broken, it shows up in every type of relationship, right? So say a parent abandoned you. It doesn't just show up in your parental relationship. It shows up in your friendships, right? It shows up with your employer-employee relationships, okay? Stubbornness is often a defense mechanism to cope with abandonment. If you're wondering why some people are just so stubborn and they resist change, they may have abandonment issues, okay? And it's out of fear, but it can look like arrogance, okay? And that kind of resistance can show up as independence, right? We see this in a lot of single moms, okay? Perfectionism or building up these emotional walls, but it's all rooted in the pain of abandonment. Your hyper independence is so that you never have to need anybody again, right? It's a pain there from abandonment that needs to be processed. That thick wall that you put up, it does not just keep other people out, it keeps your healing out too, right? It keeps your freedom out, it keeps peace out, okay? So that feeling of not being enough, that often comes from early emotional rejection, right? Or being made to feel like your love had to be earned, okay? If somebody important left you or made love a conditional thing instead of unconditional, then you internalize that as I must not be enough if I can't do XYZ. And what happens with that? You see that manifest in couples, right? That belief leads to self-sabotage. It leads to people pleasing or even isolation, okay? When someone leaves or neglects you, especially in those early years, you often internalize the wrong lesson. This teaches you that they left because of me, right? Or if I was better, or if I did XYZ, then they would have stayed. That mindset becomes a filter, right? And it makes you have those performance-based relationships. You feel like you have to earn somebody's love. You have to prove that you're worthy, right? That you can't make a mistake. And then the perfectionism comes in, having to have everything right. Everything has to be done a specific way, right? And that's exhausting. And it's also false. So you now have a filter in all of your connections with people that says that I have to prove that I am worthy of love. And that's false, right? Love should be safe. It's not a job you clock in, you clock out, okay? It should be unconditional and not conditional. If it's conditional, it's not love, right? The loneliness that comes from abandonment, it's not just about being alone, right? It's also about feeling unseen. So you can have a group of people around you, but you still feel unseen and feel unheard and feel misunderstood, or you feel emotionally disconnected from people. This is loneliness as well. Sometimes you feel alone, right? Not because the people are not there and not available to you. Sometimes it's because you've trained yourself not to need people, right? For fear of abandonment. And that is that perception of loneliness, that illusion of isolation created by the trauma of the abandonment, right? And healing will start when you acknowledge your fear of people getting close to you, right? When you understand that what you feel is based on a past wound, it's not something that's currently happening, right? And when you choose to have connections anyway, right? So loneliness is not always about the absence, right? It's about that internal disconnection from yourself and from other people. But sometimes sitting down in your own feelings, which some of us avoid being alone, right? Because of abandonment. But sometimes sitting in your own feelings can teach you to understand your own heart, right? It can cause you to address those old wounds. Going through those feelings can help you develop that inner stability, right? And that emotional independence that you need so that you are no longer defined by somebody staying or leaving, right? So sometimes you do need to sit by yourself so you can understand you. Like, and I mean the you way down deep inside, right? Things like rejection, betrayal, and abandonment can distort your expectations, right? They can give you these false illusions of what life should be, how people should be, how you should be, right? It gives you this false perception of even who you are, okay? When your early experiences include betrayal or neglect, your brain becomes wired to expect pain and to expect inconsistency. And that's why we have a lot of toxic friendships, a lot of toxic relationships, because you're dealing with someone who has not addressed their abandonment issues, and they expect pain, they expect the inconsistency, they expect the toxicity, right? All that does is create anxiety and insecurity. Okay? So remember, anxiety is the negative hope, right? It's hope in reverse. It's that expectation, but what you're expecting is negative, right? So instead of hope, which is positive expectation, you have anxiety, which is that negative expectation. Okay? Fear of abandonment is tied to fear of rejection. Most of the time, they're both right there together. They're cousins, right? Rejection says, I don't want you. But abandonment says, I had you, but I left you, right? So abandonment is about exits, and rejection is about disapproval. Does that make sense? They're both emotionally intertwined. Both create fear of not being enough, and they lead to you people pleasing. They lead to you over apologizing. They lead to you avoiding being vulnerable, right? They lead to you staying in those unhealthy relationships, okay? These fears are rooted in very real experiences. These are things you actually went through, right? Being neglected, being emotionally ignored, or being unsupported, okay? Fear of abandonment is the fear of losing what was given, okay? And this fear is very relational. It's about someone or something specific, right, that once brought you comfort or support leaving or disappearing. Emotional neglect, inconsistent care, right, or lack of support will trigger that fear of abandonment in any way, whether you feel it emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually. It will trigger that fear of abandonment, right? And that's why people often become controlling or over accommodating, right? They're trying to keep what they are afraid to lose, okay? When other people neglect your needs, you start neglecting your needs too, right? This is a consequence of not dealing with those abandonment issues. You abandon your truth, right? And you exchange your truth for someone else's truth. You abandon your voice, right? Now you're silent. You won't offer your opinion. You abandon your own emotional needs, okay? You also abandon your boundaries. Your boundaries come down. Now people are walking all over you, doing whatever to you, okay, through you, because you're so used to that pain and inconsistency. You learn to silence your pain. You learn to suppress your opinions. You learn to betray your own heart, right? Just to avoid being abandoned again. Okay? So when abandonment issues are unhealed, you might try to prevent it from happening by, like I said, becoming overly controlling, trying to control the outcome because you don't want to feel that abandonment again. You might do it by trying to anticipate somebody else's needs, right? Or sacrificing your own peace to keep people close. These behaviors are survival tactics, right? But they also still keep you stuck in fear, and they prevent you from having those real authentic connections, okay? Because the version of you that people are getting is not really you. It's a fear response, right? Control is an illusion. We don't have control over a lot of things. You can't force people to stay, right? Some people leave when you do everything right, okay? You cannot prevent pain by controlling other people. What is in your control is how you express your truth. What is in your control is how you heal and how you grow and who you choose to give access to, right? If it's here, then it's meant to be here. If it's not, then it won't be. And that's just it, right? This mindset doesn't mean that you simply don't care, but it just means a peaceful surrender to what is real and not what you're imagining, okay? There is freedom in accepting this truth. If it's meant to be, it will stay. If it's not, it won't. If you have control issues, if it's meant to be, it will stay. If it's not, it won't. You cannot force love. You cannot force loyalty. You cannot force someone to stay where they do not want to be. Okay? Trying to control outcomes that are not in your power only deepens that pain. It only deepens the suffering, right? Releasing does not mean you don't care. It means that you trust the process and you want to protect your peace, okay? So healing is not always about who abandoned you. Sometimes you do need to abandon people, right? Sometimes you need to walk away from unhealthy people, unhealthy places, right? Unhealthy things and patterns. This kind of abandonment is sacred, right? It's not rejection, it's just redirection, right? You leave people who dishonor your growth, okay? You leave environments that drain your purpose, that have you going in the wrong direction. You leave patterns that no longer serve your healing, no longer serve your growth, right? That's not abandonment. That is choosing yourself. That is choosing to get to the root of who you are, who God has created you to be. So you don't want to abandon yourself in this process, right? The most tragic form of abandonment is self-abandonment, right? When you suppress your needs, your feelings, or your identity to keep someone else around you, right? So you can feel abandoned because of emotional neglect, being inconsistently cared for, or you can also feel abandoned from non-support, right? And that, again, causes controlling behaviors. It causes people pleasing. Same as with the fear of rejection, right? So abandonment is about the exits after feeling or being rejected. They are very closely related. And you have to release these thoughts and feelings connected to always having something that isn't in your control. If it's here, it's meant to be here. If it's not, it can't or it won't be, right? That's the truth. Express how you feel about it, accept it, right? Acknowledge that. And in that process, don't abandon yourself. The source of a lot of torment and worry that you are experiencing can even be rooted in those memories of abandonment, right? This is a memory loop that keeps going over and over about the person that talked about you, right? Memories that made you afraid, memories that made you anxious and depressed, memories that made you angry, right? That left you feeling vulnerable, that left you feeling rejected. You have to get out of those loops, right? If it's not a memory that is growing you or that is being used for a testimony, you have to let it go, right? And like I said, sometimes leaving is necessary. Sometimes people had to leave to protect you. You don't see it as protection then, right? But if they were a person that was not going to be good to you, or you were not going to be good to them, sometimes leaving is necessary, right? And so when you abandon a person, a place, or thing for your safety, for your good, you establish a new bond that will be beneficial to you, right? And more life-sustaining than that old bond, right? So instead of seeing neglect, you see proper stewardship, you see guidance, right? So you must be restored in every area that you have experienced an exit in your life. No matter what the exit was, no matter what the loss was, if it was a friendship, a relationship, if it was through death, right? That's a loss as well. You can feel abandonment because someone died and you feel that they left you uncared for or unsupported, right? That must be processed, which means that you have to stop ignoring it. Stop ignoring that it happened And so we do a lot of ignoring the feelings that we don't want to feel, right? If we feel pain because we don't want to feel pain, we say, oh, we're not hurt, right? But you are hurt. And you're just saying you're not because you don't want to feel it. But your body knows, your brain knows, everything inside of you knows that you're hurt, right? You're hurt. It hurts you. They hurt your feelings, okay? And if you don't deal with it, you will keep bleeding on everybody else. Unintentionally. Hopefully it's unintentionally, right? But you must deal with those issues, with that loss. You have to acknowledge the pain that it is making you feel or that it made you feel. You have to identify the lies and scenarios that you made up in addition to the truth, right? So someone left, something or someone abandoned you, that part's true. But there's also the lies that you added to the truth that you're dealing with the consequence of, right? Some of it is about forgiveness, right? And that forgiveness unshackles your mind, it unshackles your will, it unshackles your emotion, unties your emotions, right? So you can have a little more room for love and hope and expectation, okay? Sometimes it even unshackles your physical body, right? Because some of those abandonment issues create those fears that keep you locked up. You have muscle tension and headaches and all these other things going on in your body because these emotions were not processed, right? So healing means you need to update your belief system, right? Not everybody's going to leave. Not everybody is unsafe. Some connections are secure, right? You need to update that belief system in your mind. Healing begins when you stop doing to yourself what other people did to you, right? Stop abandoning yourself. Stop not saying how you feel, not giving your opinion. Stop minimizing yourself just because someone else did that to you, right? You don't have to stay stuck in that place. You're allowed to feel it, to grieve it, to name it, right? That's the beginning, is naming it, acknowledging it, right? And then releasing it. Your past explains you, but it does not define you, right? It takes part in how you shape the way you think, but you don't allow your experiences to define who you are. Just because something happened to you doesn't mean that is you, right? Healing requires you to reconnect with your true self before the abandonment, right? Even if that means losing people who only stayed because you were minimizing yourself. Some people are only around because you're not giving your opinion. They're only around because they don't know the real you. They're around because the person they enjoy is the person that you created. But you're suffering because it's not even you. You don't even feel free. So I want to encourage you to deal with your abandonment issues. And you can be abandoned mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, right? And some of your stubbornness is because you haven't dealt with your abandonment issues. Some of your resistance to change, your hyper independence, is due to those abandonment issues, right? But the truth is, not everyone is going to leave. Not everything is going to leave, right? Not every person is unsafe. And some connections that you have are secure. They are safe. You can be vulnerable, right? So I hope this helps you all. If you know someone who's dealing with abandonment issues, please send them to this session on today. I also want to let you know that we now have our online courses available. The first 2 modules are available. If you go to www.edwinabayou.com, that's EDWINAEBAYEWU, you can enroll there right on the site. I also allowed one of the lessons to be available for you to just try it out, right? And that will be in the first module, Discovery. The very first lesson in there is foundational principles, and we all need that, right? So you will have to get you a login information like that in order to view that free session. So go ahead and check it out. If you feel compelled, if you're ready to go on this journey of discovery, go ahead and sign up for it. Let us know what you think. God bless you all.